Give the key to Mom. If you resist, it's divorce, my husband said coldly, without even looking at me. Is this the end of the 10 years we've been together as a married couple? However, there is no sadness in those words, only emptiness that was engulfing me. My name is Charlie. I am a mother of 2 and a freelance engineer. These 2 children are twin boys, so they are quite a handful. Since my parents have already passed away, I couldn't go back to my hometown to give birth or anything, so I went through tough times, and I'm currently experiencing the difficulty of balancing work and childcare. Nevertheless, my adorable children remain unchanged. Even amidst the annoyance, I wonder what it means to be called a mother, if you are unable to love even the bothersome aspects. No matter how sleep-deprived I am, no matter how exhausted I may be, there's no break from the job of being a mother. Always putting my own needs aside, I've prioritized my children. During times like these, I deeply feel that it's fortunate I have a work-from-home job. Thanks to that, I've always been able to be with my children, watching over their growth. So no matter how tough things get, my feeling that my children come first hasn't changed. When those children reached the age of 10, I was filled with a sense of accomplishment in a way. Surely, my husband loves the children in the same way, and my mother-in-law must also find her cute grandchildren truly adorable. I realized that this was all a complete misunderstanding when it was the time of my children's first festival. Since I didn't have any brothers, I wasn't very familiar, but for a boy's first festival in Japan, it's common to decorate with a kabuto helmet. Naturally, our family thought we would prepare kabuto helmets for both of our sons, so I discussed the purchase with my husband, but he didn't look pleased. Do we really need to have them? It's kind of rare nowadays to prepare such things. I was laughed at for being an old-fashioned person. Certainly, if put that way, maybe it doesn't matter, but in Japan, it's a deeply rooted tradition that has been around for a long time. Even if it's out of step with the times, isn't taking action with your children in mind what being a parent is about. However, if the purchase was denied by my husband, there was nothing I could do. We gave up on buying the large kabuto helmets, and instead put toy-like helmets on the children's heads, and took photos. That became a good memory in its own right. The photos were displayed in the living room forever, and I was constantly comforted by the smiles of my children. The children say, "It's embarrassing, so put it away," but as a parent, I want to leave them up forever. Actually, my husband's coldness toward the children isn't limited to just this. That callousness had already begun from the time of our marriage. I married Preston, my husband, because I found out I was pregnant. Although it was an unplanned pregnancy, he assured me he would take responsibility. I remember vowing to become a good partner for this person for the rest of my life, due to their incredibly decisive decision. However, after marriage, it became clear that, unexpectedly, my husband was a cold person. When I told him I was suffering from morning sickness and couldn't prepare meals, without hesitation, he'd run to the convenience store and come back with only his own food. Of course, there was none for me, and he didn't even have excuses like I didn't know. Naturally, he wouldn't buy anything for me, nor would he ask what I wanted. You might think, well, why not contact him yourself and ask him to get it for you? But unfortunately, my husband is the type who throws away his smartphone as soon as he gets home, so that's futile. If I were to say, "Could you go again?" he would silently slam a glass of water onto the floor, then stomp off to his room. Of course, this has been proven time and time again. Why did I marry someone like him? Where did the sincere man, who vowed to spend his life with me, go? I've thought that many times. And there's no one I can talk to about this. Because I'm a freelancer, I don't have colleagues, and I don't have close friends to complain to. I considered calling a counseling center I once saw in a restroom somewhere, but I gave up because I didn't have the confidence to raise the twins I was already expecting on my own. For me, who lost my father early on, the presence of a father figure is significant. I can't selfishly take away their father from my children. Moreover, even if he treats me coldly, he will probably be a kind father to the children. That's what I thought, and I was naive. My husband was also harsh with the children. If they cried at night, he'd jump up and say, "Go outside!" If the living room was messy, when he came back from work, he'd ask, "Should I throw this away?" Naturally, the children were frightened of their father's presence. They never knew when he would explode in anger. For them, it was like walking through a minefield that didn't need to be walked on. Maybe I should have left at that time. I've shed countless tears blaming myself. Still, I think I was yearning for the significance of a father figure. Children need a father. If I do as my husband says, he'll be in a good mood, and I need to be stronger. That was my thinking, manipulated only by the notion of having a father figure. In addition to the discord with my husband, my relationship with my mother-in-law also posed a significant obstacle. The in-laws' home, where my mother-in-law lives, is located about a 20-minute drive from the apartment where we live. It's not too far, not too close, just the right distance. However, this mother-in-law of mine is quite a character. When our children were just born, even though I was working from home, I took time off. Due to night feedings, I would occasionally take a nap while the children napped during the day. One time, as I was dozing off, suddenly there was a loud noise, and the front door opened. Startled by the sound, I unconsciously positioned myself in front of the children, assuming a defensive posture. Could it be my husband returning? No, he mentioned he had a 2-day business trip and left this morning. Then a delivery person? No, they can't open a locked door. So, who on earth could it be? Gripping a nearby curtain rod with trembling hands, I waited for the person, whose footsteps were drawing nearer and nearer to appear. "Hello! I'm coming in." With a flourish, my mother-in-law swung open the living room door, her face sweaty, due to the midsummer heat. The loud noise caused by my mother-in-law's entrance woke up the children, who, not wanting to be outdone, started crying loudly. I was also in shock seeing my mother-in-law, but the children's voices brought me back to reality. "Hello, Tracy. Was the front door unlocked?" I asked while holding up the children, and my mother-in-law reclined on the sofa, waving her hand and shaking her head while covering her face. "Of course not. The door was properly locked. How can you ask such a thing? Do you have a habit of leaving it unlocked?" No, as a stay-at-home mom, you need to protect the house." My mother-in-law scolded me in that manner. The fact that the door was securely locked meant that my mother-in-law had entered after unlocking it. "Oh, by any chance, Tracy, do you have a key to our place?" Finally, the crying children calmed down, and I timidly asked, but my mother-in-law, getting irritated by my tone, raised her voice. "Of course I do. What if something happens? It's only natural for parents to have the key to the house where their children live. For parents, that's just common sense. But I guess you, with no parents around, wouldn't understand. Once again, my mother-in-law's loud voice ignited the children, who had finally settled down. Seemingly unable to bear the children's crying, my mother-in-law exclaimed, "I can't even get a moment's peace," and went into my husband's room. What on earth did she come here to do? However, after being told, "You wouldn't understand, being without parents," my courage to confront my mother-in-law was eroded. At that moment, I was probably half crying, while soothing the child. According to my mother-in-law's words, to me, who had no parents, she was the only one I could call a mother. Having her inexplicable anger directed at me, and while soothing crying children for the second time, my mental state was already shattered. As I grew older, thoughts like that became less and less important. Lately, even my mother-in-law's visits, where she complains about household chores, don't bother me anymore. I realized I can think of her unannounced visits as natural disasters like earthquakes or sudden heavy rainfalls, and just accept them. Since then, I hardly got hurt emotionally, and I became adept at dodging the complaints. My husband's attitude remained the same, but it no longer bothered me either. With his busy job, he sometimes comes home late, which gives me the opportunity to have lively meals with the children. In fact, it has become a source of great joy. His position has improved, leading to frequent business trips. The saying, "a healthy husband is a good thing to have while he's away," couldn't be truer. And this year, finally, my long-held dream of receiving the keys to the high-rise tower came true. Just as my children were born, near the apartment where we used to live, a large tower condominium was built. Everyone coming out of the entrance of that tower seemed to exude confidence, and they illuminated my once timid heart. Someday, I want to live in a place like that too. How happy would I be if I could work and raise children while enjoying a great view? With that thought, I started saving as much as I could. Of course, I didn't hesitate to spend money on our children's education, or my husband's occasional indulgences. I knew that, if I deprived my husband of even one of his pleasures, he would erupt in anger like a blazing fire. When it comes to my cost-cutting efforts, I resisted buying fashion items every season, and switched from high-end cosmetics to budget-friendly ones. At first, it was a struggle to suppress the desire to buy things I saw on familiar online shopping sites, but as I kept enduring for the sake of the condominium purchase, I found that I could enjoy just looking. Additionally, realizing how much I had been squandering before, and feeling the urge to sigh at the thought of how I should have saved up all that money, I continued diligently saving. I put in extra effort by increasing my workload, and as a result, I finally managed to gather the down payment necessary for the purchase. And luckily, at that timing, I found out that a new tower condominium construction was starting nearby, and my heart was filled with excitement. I visited the real estate agent to express my desire to purchase a unit that was put up for sale during construction, and swiftly went through the purchase process ahead of everyone else. The contract papers that came back to me were treasures second only to my children. And finally, on the day of the handover, I stood in front of the residential tower with my children. Given the keys by the real estate agent, I could finally enter the completed apartment. Holding hands with the children, "Hurry up, let's go!" they urge me on. Wait, I want to savor this sentimental moment a bit longer. Yet, I understand the children's eagerness to get inside. "Okay, let's go then." I say and step into the entrance. The long-desired residential tower wasn't as luxurious as I had imagined, and it was simpler than I had thought. Still, as I took a step inside, I could smell the newness of the construction. With the excited children by my side, we got on the elevator to go to the 15th floor we purchased. Climbing the floors at an astonishing speed, we arrived at the 15th floor in no time. Entering the empty room, the children run around. "Here's my room! It's my room!" And they quickly start staking their claims. Perhaps due to the limited number of rooms in our previous apartment, they shared a room before. Now, having their own rooms seemed to fill them with a sense of excitement. When I join them, my phone starts ringing. Checking the continuously ringing phone, I see that it's a call from my mother-in-law. I wonder what she could want at this time of day, so I press the answer button, and her irritable voice comes through. "Where are you right now? Even though your husband is at work, what do you mean by leaving the house unattended for such a long time?" Hearing those words, I was sure my mother-in-law is at the apartment again. On a weekday, when I should be at home and not returning for hours, she must have been unable to bear it any longer and called in anger. "I'm sorry, Tracy. Today is the day of the apartment handover. I'll be back soon." My words seemed to satisfy my mother-in-law, and although her mood was still sour, she ended the call. With the children still not done playing around, I held them close and said, "Let's start preparing for the move quickly," as we headed home. Returning to our home apartment, it seemed my mother-in-law was still there. I send the children to their room and go into the living room, where I find my mother-in-law lounging on the sofa, indulgently enjoying some ice cream. "MMM," she says, extending her right hand toward me. "What's wrong? Do you want a massage?" Though I somewhat understand that her hand gesture means give me the keys, I decide to tease her, as I didn't want to give in easily. "Don't play dumb. Hand over the keys already. I told you before, as a parent, it's our duty to have the keys to where our child lives." Understanding that she indeed wanted the keys, I suppressed a sigh that nearly escaped. "I'm sorry, Tracy. I'll discuss the key situation with Preston. If I give you a key now, we might end up short one, so I might need to make a duplicate key before giving it to you." Distracting her with a seemingly reasonable explanation. My not-so-bright mother-in-law accepted it. "Well, I guess that makes sense." Relieved by this, I go to the bathroom, and when I return to the living room, my mother-in-law is nowhere to be seen. If she had stayed just to discuss the keys, that would have required considerable patience. Something I realized later was that all the snacks I had bought for the children were gone. Thinking they probably became my mother-in-law's fat, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I had planned to talk to my husband about it that day, but after dinner, he called me over, saying, "Come to my room later." The atmosphere was somehow tense, and the children wore somewhat fearful expressions. "I understand," I replied. Then, my husband simply went into his room. Somehow, I sensed what my husband wanted to talk about, so after telling the children, "Hurry up and pack your things," I knocked on my husband's room. He was reclining on the sofa, elegantly swirling a wine glass. "You know, why don't you make an effort to live happily?" he said coldly, without looking at me. I'm sure he had heard about the key from his mother. My assumption that she had understood and agreed before was just an act. "Just hand over the key already. We can make a duplicate even with the keys we have. Why do you always have to be so difficult? Do you dislike my mother that much?" This time, he glared at me, muttering irritably with a disapproving click of his tongue. That's true, too. But if we don't talk first, your mood will worsen again, won't it? That's why I wanted to discuss it first. In the next moment, he slammed the glass he was holding onto the rug. I hate your smart mouth. Damn it! Just give the key to Mom. If you defy me, we're getting a divorce. Looking at the rug, with the wine stain resembling a pool of blood, he waved his hand dismissively. I bowed to him and left the room. How far would my husband and mother-in-law go in belittling me? As I started contemplating what to do next, a clever idea came to mind. To carry out that plan, I began to take action. A month had passed since that incident, and the children and I had completed the move to the new tower apartment. Because my husband had a long business trip, scheduled starting from the day after that incident, we had come here ahead of him. Of course, as my husband instructed, I had given the key to my mother-in-law. However, since the place was still empty with no belongings, I had told her that we'd show her around after the move was completed. So, until today, my mother-in-law hadn't come to the tower apartment. My husband was due to come here along with my mother-in-law after returning from his business trip. While having an early dinner with the children, the intercom installed in the room began to ring. Presumably, someone was at the door, asking me to open the auto lock. However, I wasn't expecting anyone who couldn't open the auto lock, so I continued to ignore it. Despite my ignoring it, the intercom wouldn't stop ringing. Eventually, even my phone started ringing. Of course, the caller was my husband. The entrance of this apartment building has an auto lock system, and the keys that my husband and mother-in-law have are of the IC card type. Of course, the key I have is also an IC card, but it's different from what my husband and mother-in-law have. Taking advantage of my husband being on a long business trip, I had gone to the management office of the apartment building and changed the IC card and passcode. In other words, the keys and passcodes my husband and mother-in-law have can't unlock the door. What the hell are you thinking? Why won't the key work? I'm your husband, you know. When I pressed the answer button and answered the call, I could hear my husband's furious voice. In the background, my mother-in-law's voice could also be heard raised in anger. Hey, did you forget? Back when we first got married, you handed me a divorce paper. You said we'd get divorced if I resisted. Well, I expected you'd resist, so I got divorced in advance. In the early days of our marriage, my husband, tired of my constant opinions, handed me a pre-filled divorce form. At that time, my husband said, I can get divorced anytime I want, and he had control over me. Upon learning of my husband's feelings, I was desperate not to be abandoned. It's a memory that I can laugh about now. Besides, don't you remember that this apartment is in my name? All that money you, the spendthrift, paid to buy this apartment? You didn't use a single yen, right? My husband is an extreme spendthrift, and he only spends money on himself. Because he ran out of his own money, he even hesitated to buy a traditional Boys' Day helmet for our child. It's not like I bought this apartment just for that reason. I was at my limit, though. In a life where I thought there was only you, now there are the children. And do you think I want to be with someone who has someone else he thinks is important to him other than me? I know my husband had an affair. I had been silent for the sake of our children, but that doesn't matter anymore. I already have evidence of his infidelity, and everything is prepared. There's no need to support a husband who loves another woman and earns far less than me. It's not possible to let someone else into this apartment, right? If you keep making a scene, I'll contact the building manager and have the police called, all right? Shocked by the mention of the police, the call was disconnected and the presence in front of the intercom disappeared. The children seemed to be unaware of what was happening, but when I told them that I would be living separately from their father, they seemed to show some relief. At a later date, armed with gathered evidence, I visited a law firm and filed for compensation from my husband and his affair partner. Knowing my husband has no savings, I arranged for deductions from his salary, including child support. I warned the affair partner who tried to flee that I would contact her family if she attempted to escape. 6 months after reaching an agreement, payments have been made as promised. Although the apartment we used to live in is in my husband's name, I had been paying most of the rent and living expenses. For my husband, who is now responsible for compensation payments as well, life would be financially challenging. Nevertheless, reflecting on his past actions, I hope he makes an effort to live decently. By the way, regarding my mother-in-law, she contacted me a few times after that incident saying she wanted to see her grandchildren. But when the children responded that they didn't want to see her, I continued declining, and eventually, she stopped contacting me altogether. Though she's probably leading a dull life now, without me as an outlet for her stress, it's a matter that's completely unrelated to me. As for the children, they've been smiling more since the divorce from my husband. It seems his presence was a source of stress for them. I can't help but think I should have divorced him sooner. Now, looking ahead, I want to fill my days with happiness, so I work hard every day.